Okay. Can you all see my slides? Can someone just let me know? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Excited to have you here. So today we'll be talking about the Small Business Concept Award. It's an NCI SBIR funding opportunity. So you'll have at least two speakers today. And so my name is Billy Baza, Program Director at NCI SBIR Development Center. And sorry, I have Shakil Ahmad. It's Nadeem Khan is actually going to be presenting from DEA, Department of Extramural Affairs. And we should also, I believe, have Tiffany Chadwick on the line, and she'll be available to give some help with OA, Office of Acquisition questions. Okay, before we get started, a few housekeeping slides. This presentation will be recorded and it'll be posted on our website. And the slides themselves will be made available to all registered attendees. Please keep your audio muted for the duration of the webinar, but at any time, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A box, and they'll be answered at the end of the presentation during our Q&A session. So I'm going to kick things off speaking from program. Again, my name is Billy Baza, Program Director at NCI SBIR Development Center. I come here previously from FDA. I was there 7 years as a product quality research reviewer for biologics. And since moving over to NCI, I'm managing a portfolio of SBIR and STTR awardees, and my portfolio largely consists of therapeutics. And I'm speaking today, I'm taking the lead on this concept award initiative. So before we get started, just one slide. I just really wanted to highlight, why we developed this funding opportunity, what the concept award is, and what we're looking for. So it's a phase 1 SBIR contract mechanism for $300,000 for a period of work of 1 year. And this whole funding opportunity was put together to really focus on innovation. And we're looking for early stage technologies that are really disruptive and transformative in the space of rare and pediatric cancer. And this is a high priority for NCI. And the reason we generated this funding opportunity is we found our portfolio was lacking in two things. One, some of these early stage, high risk, high reward technologies, and also technologies that are existing in the rare and pediatric cancer space. So we recognize those technologies and those disease indications can be difficult for companies to raise outside funds. So, this is our major goal, to help de-risk these technologies through federal funding and make them more competitive. So I'm going to go over a couple of general details of the SBIR program now, and then I'll circle back and then we'll really focus in on the concept award. So I'd like to start out with this first slide. So depending on the audience, people can be more familiar with some of the more typical NIH academic grants, where those grants can be focused on advancing knowledge gain and answering a basic science research question. But within the SBIR and STTR mechanism, everything is really centered around the ability to develop a product and to commercialize that product. So although different components of the application and the peer review are quite similar, such as approach, significance, innovation, expertise, and environment, for the SBIR mechanism, all of those factors centered around a product and the ability to actually commercialize the product. So that's quite essential. So the SBIR program, it's a congressionally mandated program. So here I'm showing you numbers from our set aside for FY21 for SBIR and our smaller sister program, STTR. So the concept award mechanism is through SBIR. So I'll be solely focusing on SBIR for the rest of the presentation. But you can see the program is quite large, lots of federal dollars that are available. And in FY21, we were able to award $182 million from NCI, and collectively at the NIH, $1.2 billion. So there are 27 different institutes at NIH, and each institute is responsible for housing its own SBIR program. Again, I'm speaking to you today from NCI. And here at NCI, we've developed a centralized core. And what that means is all of our program directors are devoted and all they work on is the SBIR program. So that allows us to do a lot more with our time. So scientific and technical portfolio management, at any given year, we're balancing and maintaining around 500 awards. We provide application and resubmission guidance. We encourage offerers and applicants to reach out to us, and we typically provide guidance, and sometimes this is in the form of a specific aims page. We develop and manage funding opportunities. So just like the Concept Award, that's a new funding opportunity, the second year we're running this program. We have a lot of non-funding resources as well, and all of those are built towards driving commercialization of early stage and developing technologies and providing training and mentoring for companies that become awardees. So here at NCI, we use a metrics-driven approach, and we really focus on communication and outreach strategy. And one of our major strategic pillars is improvement of diversity and inclusion. So a common question that frequently pops up is, what is NCI SBIR interested in funding? And the short, simple answer is really anything that touches a cancer patient or provider is something we would consider funding in the program. So here's a pie chart. I believe these numbers are from FY21. And so we do fund a large amount of therapeutics, but we also fund devices, imaging technologies, diagnostics, and also cancer biology tools. So to be eligible for the program, you have to be a registered for-profit United States small business. And our definition of small is 500 or fewer employees, and has to be majority owned by US residents. And an important note is the award always goes to the small business concern. So there can be partnering nonprofit research institutions on the award funded as subawards, but the award itself always goes to the small business concern. And we have a three-phase program. And so it's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 2B. And then I'll kind of explain how we envision the Concept Award fitting into that as well. So phase 1 is funding for proof of concept and feasibility studies. Those awards are $300,000 to $400,000 for a period of work of around 1 year. Phase 2 is the next stage for R&D, research and development type activities, and the awards are a bit larger, $2 million for a period of work of around 2 years. And our largest award is the phase 2B or Bridge Award, and this is $4 million for a period of work of 2 to 3 years. And this funding is to help cross the proverbial valley of death. And an expectation with this award is that companies will go out and raise matching one-to-one funds outside of the federal government. And then phase 3 would kind of be after you've gone through the SBIR program and you're using, hopefully you're able to raise funds from outside of the federal government and use those to kind of finish off the commercialization of your technology. So now the Concept Award it's a phase 1 contract, but however, we're talking about early stage research, so we kind of envision it a little bit early, a little bit before some of the technologies that typically go in through our general mechanism. And the goal and the hope is through the Concept Award mechanism, these technologies will be de-risked, and then applicants and offerers can come in and apply for some of our more traditional funding mechanisms. So here at NCI SBIR, we fund things through two different mechanisms, grants and contracts. The large majority of things that we fund are through grants, specifically through the omnibus solicitation. And that's where the scope or the problem and the unmet medical need is all defined by the investigator. So for that reason, really any technology in the cancer space can apply through this mechanism. We have a few targeted solicitations under grants also. I think we have 3 that are currently active. And then contracts. So we primarily use contracts to address and fund NCI priority areas, such as the Concept Award. So we mentioned these slides will be made available, so I wanted to provide all of the current and upcoming funding opportunities and receipt dates. So moving down the list from top to bottom, we mentioned the Omnibus. It's our largest funding opportunity. It has 3 standard receipt dates every year. The next 3 lines under that are targeted grant funding opportunities. So you can see if you have an additional technology that's relevant. Underneath that, we have the Small Business Transition Grant. This is a kind of a mechanism where you can, it's kind of like a fast track where phase 1 component is STTR and phase 2 component is SBIR. And the whole goal of the fast track is to help transfer both the technology and the PI, who in this funding opportunity is often considered a postdoc, from an academic to a business setting. And we have highlighted in the green box our Concept Award solicitation. We mentioned the phase 2B Bridge Award coming in August 5th. And the last line is our general contract solicitation, which usually falls in October every year. Again, one more slide just to highlight differences between grants and contracts. We already touched on the first one, scope of the proposal, right? So the scope of the proposal and problem is defined by the investigator for grants, but for contracts, the institute defines them. Where the peer review happens is different. For Grants, it's centralized within CSR, and for contracts, it's within DEA, within the Institute. And the only other one I'm going to talk about is questions. So the communication is a little bit more direct for grants. Companies can directly reach out and meet with program directors and get one-on-one feedback. For contracts, we still provide guidance and feedback, but that communication has to go through the contracting office. And highlighted on yellow on this slide is the email box. So if you have any questions related to the concept award, please direct them there. And then they're typically, if they're program related, will be sent out and filtered to the program staff. But if you have general questions about the SBIR program or about grants, we have all of our program directors listed on our website, so you can go match the program director subject matter expertise to your technology and get some product specific guidance and feedback. I also wanted to mention we have an outstanding supporting staff here. Bryce Gillen's on the line. He helps with all of the webinar and outreach format and logistics. And Dr. Sarah Jamil is also on the line, and she'll be moderating and fielding and helping answer questions at the end of this presentation. Okay, so now let's dive into the concept award and give some specific feedback, right? So let's just rehash what the concept award is. Again, the focus is really on innovation, this early stage transformative technologies that are really disruptive in the space of rare and pediatric cancer. Phase 1 SBIR contract mechanism for $300,000 for 1 year of work. This is the second year we're running this program. This year we're also encouraging rare cancers that have low 5-year survival rates. So a question that often comes up is, what is innovative? So here's a couple bulleted points on some ideas of what we consider innovative. Development of groundbreaking new products, technologies, or tools, certainly innovative. We're looking for disruptive innovation rather than an incremental improvement to an existing technology. And pretty much if you think about your technology and consider, is it transformative in how the cancer that you're targeting is currently being diagnosed or treated, does it really change the standard of care? That's what we're considering disruptive. Things that are not innovative, if you're developing a therapeutic and there's already several therapeutics that are FDA approved for that specific target, probably not the best funding opportunity. And if your technology is already kind of far along developed, it's already in kind of this clinical stage testing, or it's a continuation of an already funded SBIR program or project, probably not the right funding opportunity, and you should consider a different mechanism. Okay, another slide here with some unique features of the program. So on the left, we have kind of all the dates. So the next major deadline is submission of a white paper. So you can think of a white paper as a letter of intent or kind of a specific aims page. And we're highly encouraging submission of these white papers. These are short 2 to 3 page summaries of your technology. And the purpose is to submit them and gain NCI feedback, whether your technology that you're proposing is considered within scope of this funding opportunity. The full proposals themselves are much shorter. We're talking about 20 pages compared to around 50 or so for which we typically see for phase 1 applications. This year, something new that we're doing, a fillable technical proposal form we've generated. And the next slide is gonna touch on this a bit more, but essentially the purpose of creating this was to kind of streamline and homogenize both the application and the peer review. Preliminary data is not required. It can be optionally submitted, and we'll talk about that, but it's not required. And an interesting and great feature of this program is last year, and we're planning this year also, is to make the awards rapidly within 6 months. So for those reasons, we're not accepting any non-exempt human subject research. There's a special review criteria. I think I'll defer and let Nadim talk about that. And there's also an expectation that companies or awardees, I should say, are going to enroll in the NIH I-Corps program. And we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation as well. Okay, so we mentioned this fillable technical proposal form. So if you go to the program announcement link on the left-hand side, you'll see 2 different documents which you can download. The first is the solicitation, and the second is this actual fillable technical proposal form. And so it's a PDF document where you can check boxes, type, enter information. And again, the purpose of this is to streamline both the application and hopefully peer review. The first page of the document is what I'm showing on the right-hand side of this slide, and it has it's kind of just a checklist to make sure all of the information is entered and complete. So you'll start out with this cover page checklist sheet, then there's an abstract and research plan, and then the next section has the technical proposal content. That's really going to be the meat of the document, and we're going to touch on a couple of these sections and let you know what we're looking for. There's also a statement of work pages and a biosketches section that has to be completed and attached. I'll talk about that also. Okay, so for the technical proposal content, the first section is identification and significance of the problem or opportunity. So here we're just asking you to kind of clearly state what the problem is, what the existing unmet medical need is, and it should be specifically tied to a rare and or pediatric cancer. And then in this section and the next section, which is the proposed technological solution, you'll start to kind of develop and demonstrate the rationale for your proposed technology to address this unmet medical need. So the next section is proposed technological solution, right? So the first section was, the question and the problem, and now this section is, what's the answer? So describe the proposed solution to the unmet medical need, and you should be commenting on your technology is ideally suited to address this. So in this section, you'll also need to establish project feasibility. So there's some confidence that whatever you're proposing, even though it's early stage, has some chance, some likelihood of success. And how you can do that is one of two ways. You can cite supporting scientific literature, or you can also refer to preliminary data if you've generated any. So it's not required, but it can be optionally included or referred to in a one-page attachment. And in the solicitation, there's instructions on how to do this, but essentially you can create a one-page Word document with your preliminary data, convert it to a PDF file, and then merge it to this fillable technical PDF file. The next section is innovation. So this is obviously an important part of the application. So we're asking you to highlight the disruptive innovation of the proposed research project, discuss the transformative potential of the project to existing standard of care. And this year, we're asking you to go a little bit further. We're requesting subsections for any creative thinking approaches that you may have used to develop your technology and to describe project risk-reward ratios as well. And just remember, I didn't mention this, but we're going to discuss the peer review scoring is the weighting's a bit different, and there's this high bar in innovation. So, use this section to kind of clearly illustrate the innovation of your technology. Next section is approach and methodology. So here we're asking you to define your technical objectives and milestones for each proposed aim. And you should be providing enough detail to allow for sufficient technical evaluation. And how you can do this is you can discuss methods that are used to tackle each objective and task, discuss any anticipated challenges and alternative strategies. And really each objective should have this measurable benchmark and quantitative parameter for success. So whatever you're proposing, we can kind of clearly see what the outcome will be. And there should be some rationale for, what that parameter is. And this section, we're asking you to conclude off with describe the role and time allocated toward the project for each key personnel. Essentially, what we want to get at is, do all of the work that's being proposed, can it be accomplished and handled by the key personnel that are listed on the application, and are they committing significant time to it? The next section, product discovery and development. So here we're asking you to define a deliverable. So we understand this is early stage research, and there's probably not an immediate short-term commercial product on the horizon, but there should still be a clear deliverable, and you should describe how that deliverable will fit into the long-term product development strategy. And the third bullet kind of sets you up a little bit there. Successful execution of the concept award proposals should help de-risk the technology, right? So once it's de-risked, you can consider, where you would come in potentially at phase 1 or phase 2 through some of our more standard funding opportunities. The next section goes with this a bit, potential commercial application. So, even though there's not an immediate short-term commercial product that's likely, there still has to be an existing commercial potential or path. So there has to be a market for whatever technology you're proposing to develop, and you should discuss how you would be able to enter into that market and if there's any potential barriers as well. In this section, you can also describe strategy for protecting your innovation, such as IP or market exclusivity, if that applies. There'll be a section on resources where you can discuss all of your available facilities and equipment. And then biosketches. So this will be, there's a link where you can go and a template will pop up and you can generate all of your biosketches information for your key personnel. That'll be a Word document. And then you have to convert that into a PDF and then combine it to your technical proposal form. So this is very important. There can be only one document that's submitted for the technical proposal form. So that's the fillable form, and then what you attach as the biosketches, and if you like, the optional one-page preliminary data also. So a question that comes up is, how do I know if my cancer is considered rare? So we've made that easy. We've provided, I should say, a web link that you can go on and double check, and it's from the NIH Genetics and Rare Diseases Information Center. So we mentioned a white paper, right? So we can think of this as a letter of intent or like a specific Ames feedback. And again, the purpose of this is to give the opportunity from NCI to tell you if it's what we consider within scope of the type of research being sought in this solicitation. So companies will submit a white paper. We conduct and perform a review with 3 internal experts. There'll be experts either related to the disease indication or to the technology itself. We'll generate a review, and then we'll provide written feedback. And that feedback will be, yes, we encourage you to submit a full proposal, or we think your technology at this stage is better suited for a different funding opportunity. And we'll give bulleted feedback for additional information as well. So here's our current timeline. The RFP is open. The first major deadline is the white paper receipt date, which is May 2nd, so about 2 weeks or so. Through the early portion of summer, we'll be providing responses to those white papers on a rolling basis. Then the full proposal due date is August 22nd. Peer review will happen in October, and then you'll be hearing from us and hopefully receiving awards in January and February of 2023. Okay, so a slide on what happens after you are funded. We mentioned, I should say, the entrepreneurial training with I-Corps. So the next slide is going to touch on that. And you'll also have access, you'll be a phase 1 awardee, so you'll have access to all of our non-funding resources, and there's a bunch. I'll recap those also coming up in a slide or two. And you all will be doing the actual work and generating this proof of concept data to help de-risk your technology. Okay, so the I-Corps program, it's an entrepreneurial program that helps company define their value proposition at an early stage. And how it does that is you form a 3-member team and you go out and conduct 100 interviews over an 8-week period. So this provides a tremendous amount of experiential learning. And I should mention these cohorts are specifically, the cohorts that are offered are specifically designed for early stage research. So it's a nice opportunity as well. I think this is my last slide here. So this is all of the other non-funding resources that we have available. I'll highlight a few, but as an awardee, if you're awarded the concept award, you have access to all of these programs. I'll just highlight a couple here. The Investor Initiatives Program is a great opportunity. It allows companies to write an application that's reviewed by venture capitalists and pharma, and companies that are selected are given both funding support, but also pitch coaching, and then they're allowed to go to technology and stage appropriate events and actually pitch their technology. The CARE program is another incredible program. It allows for early stage interaction with FDA regulators. And this is, if we're talking about a therapeutic, this was even before, like, say, a pre-IND type meeting. Yeah, and we have a ton of different programs, and when those become available, there'll be email blasts and kind of describing each of the programs. I think I'm going to stop there. There's some contact information, and I'm going to turn things over to Nadeem.
Thank you, Billy. Very concise and very good presentation about the concept award. My name is Nadeem Khan, and I'm the SRO, Scientific Review Officer at the Research, Technology and Contract Review Branch. And this comes under the division of extramural activities here at NCI. And you see Dr. Shakil Ahmed, he's also present today, and he's the branch chief of the branch that I associate with. So Billy requested me to talk about how the review process will be done. But before that, let me reiterate Billy's point that one of the important factors for this concept award or the proposals is technological innovation. And you could submit those either under a therapeutic development. They have been put under two sort of groups. We will group them according whether it is a therapeutic development or it is a technique or a device development. And you will see a checklist on your fillable PDF form where you can check things where it should be more deemed feasible for. So please make sure that you have clearly described your technological innovation. And I encourage you, and we encourage Billy together, that please take advantage of the white papers. That would really help you out to iron out what you are going to propose. And that will give you a lot more input from programmatic input, whether what you are proposing is within the concept award that you are looking for, or there are any ways that you can tweak your proposal to fit into that. So please do take advantage of that. And that would really help you out for that. So my plan is to talk about what happens at the review side. So once you submit proposals, proposals need to be submitted through the ECPS website. So, and for that reason, I really encourage you to go through the solicitations once, twice, maybe 3 times, even more, to make sure that you understand the whole entire process, starting from building your proposal, how it should be submitted, what should be included, what should not be included. So please look at the solicitation and try to understand all these important points about proposal submission so that you are not late. Please do try to submit your proposals early, at least few days before the deadline, so that if there is any problem that you can rectify it immediately. That would help you. So once we receive the proposals, and the DEA, we try to assemble the panel, and the expertise of the panel depends upon the expertise that is needed for the proposals that are being submitted. We call them spatial emphasis panel, and these are arranged or assembled depending on the proposals that we receive. And we do try our best to have, at least to some extent, perhaps to a high extent, reviewers from small business concerns. So that's an important thing that we try to keep it in mind when we are developing these panel for any SBIR or any contract reviews. With that, Billy, could you please move to the next slide? Thank you. So Billy has already touched upon these technical evaluation criteria. These are again part of the fillable PDF form. And you see on the right column, and I think we have repeated this several times, that innovation is what will drive your score to the max. So it is 50% of your score will depend on technological innovation. So please clearly describe how what you're proposing is technologically innovative and how you're going to take this forward. And that comes under the potential for commercialization, how you're going to, what is your envision? We don't expect you to have a marketable product by the end of 1 year. So please keep that in mind. But you should have some pathway. You should discuss how you're going to do it, how you're going to overcome potential barriers to the market. What is your market landscape that you think of? And again, I think as a scientific review officer, it's really, I've seen several reviews, and it really helps the reviewers to understand what is your next step. If you succeed in concept award, you should have at least a few lines about what is your path forward, how you are going to take this technology forward. So those are some of the keywords that you should look for. Billy already told that preliminary data is not required. However, you do have the option to submit 1-page optional preliminary data. That will certainly help the reviewers to understand the feasibility, you can demonstrate that feasibility of your what you're proposing. But there is one caveat. If you are presenting data, or you already have a data that shows that you have already done the proof of concept, so that may go against you. So please be mindful of your preliminary data that you're presenting. Clearly explain the data. Often reviewers complain that the figure legend is not clear, or what is presented in the figures are not at all obvious. So please do not assume anything, present everything, and clearly describe what are you presenting in those preliminary data. So coming back to the technical evaluation criteria, we have 4 of these technical evaluation criteria that will be used for evaluate your proposals. These are all listed here, and they are on page 29 of the solicitation. So you will see several pages, method of evaluation section on page 29, and you should refer to that. And again, read it carefully to understand what are the evaluation criteria against whom your proposals will be evaluated. Billy has again touched many of these things, so I will not go in details. You talk about strong scientific rationale. You need to clearly identify which cancer type, pediatric and rare cancer you are addressing, or you plan to address. There should be a strong scientific premise. Overall strategy should be well reasoned and analysis. Try to make sure that you have very good and strong statistical plans for data analysis and all. Milestones, we talk about the benchmark. We have already discussed that. Please make sure that benchmarks or milestones are sufficiently quantitative so that the reviewers can understand that if you achieve those benchmarks, that will provide you a criteria for success. And adding to that, there should be potential pitfalls and alternative strategies. That's another thing that you should look at, and you should think and carefully describe those things. What are the potential barriers? What are the potential pitfalls that you may see, and how you are going to resolve that? So those are certain things that you should keep in mind when you are writing your approach and scientific rationale. Already talked about the second technical evaluation criteria, potential for technological innovation and impact. Please clearly discuss and describe what is the technological innovation, how it is new or innovative, why you think it is innovative, and what kind of cancer it will do, what is the target critical barrier to the progress, and what is the transformative potential. So again, please try to focus a lot on the technological innovation, and so that you know, as I've said already, that 50% of your scores will depend on your technological innovation. And that's the whole idea of this concept award is technique driven and technological innovation. Again, I've already talked about commercial potential, which is the third technical evaluation criteria. As I said, we don't expect you to have a marketable product by the end of year one, but you should have some ideas and you should present your thoughts of how you feel that your product can be commercialized. There should be some discussion about the market and potential barrier to the market and how you are going to address that. And the fourth is the personnel and resources. Please make sure that you have a well-balanced team. All the expertise are covered in your proposal that you need to evaluate to run those experiments and run those developments, technique development. If you are using PIs, a multiple PI plan, please make sure that you have a multiple PI plan in your proposal. Billy already talked about the BioSketch format. Please use that format to write your BioSketches. Clearly discuss about your facilities and equipment so that the reviewer can understand that you have all the resources you need to run your project, run your proposal, and complete it. Another thing is that I often see is a timeline. Please be sure that you have a very clear timelines. Personally speaking, it is good to be ambitious, but it is not good to be overly ambitious. So please make sure that you have 1 year timeline to complete that project. So what you are proposing can be done comfortably within 1 year. So reviewers do look at that, and if they find that the proposal is overly ambitious, that often does not go in your favor. So please try to balance what you're proposing and what can be done within 1 year. Billy has already told that his proof of concept studies, de-risking is one way to look at it and show the feasibility within 1 year of your techniques or a small molecule or a therapeutic developments. And it does carry high risk, and then also it has a high reward. So try to balance those things in your favor and explain those things in the proposal. Talked already about anticipated product problems and alternative strategies. So these are some keywords that you should always keep in mind while you're writing your proposal. And that's way it's really help you if you have the white paper sent to Billy to Office of Acquisition by May 2nd, and you can have touched upon all these factors so that you can get a very good and very succinct programmatic evaluation of what you are going to propose. And if you feel that it is not up to the mark or it is not beyond the scope of the concept award, then that will save a lot of your time and effort for not writing a full proposal for this concept award solicitation. Next slide, please, Billy. All right, so this is how the proposals will be scored. So each of these 4 technical evaluation criteria will receive a score from a scale of 0 to 10. 10 is the meritorious one. Remember, these are very opposite to the grant applications, which goes from 1 to 9, 1 being the best. But for contract proposals, our score 10 is the best. So if there is a technical evaluation criteria with no weaknesses, usually it receives a score of 10. And reviewer do try to balance these things between the strengths and weaknesses. And this is not the number of weaknesses or strengths, it is the magnitude that determines the score for each technical evaluation criteria. Next slide, Billy. Thank you. And in addition to these 4 technical evaluation criteria that receive scores, your proposal will be scored for overall technical acceptability or technical unacceptability. And again, these definitions are already there in the solicitation, so I really don't want to read through each. What it defines is that if your proposal has several major weaknesses, if the reviewers identify several major weaknesses to an extent that they feel that you may not be able to complete your objectives, only in those cases it is voted technically unacceptable. However, if they are on the other side, if you have proposals which have certain weaknesses, but they are not to an extent, and reviewers, they feel that, okay, this can be done, and there are certain weaknesses that can be potentially addressed during negotiation after the evaluation. So in those cases, those proposals are voted technically acceptable. So it does not mean if your proposal is voted technically acceptable that you will get awarded. It only means that Office of Acquisition and Program will further consider your proposal for a potential award or potential negotiation with you to get those weaknesses addressed. And that's what is written on the bullet points on the bottom. NCI contracting officials will conduct a second level of review and negotiations for those proposals which are voted technically acceptable. And the whole idea is to get all those weaknesses, all those concerns identified by the panel to be addressed by the offerers, by the applicants. And if, unfortunately, if it is technically unacceptable, then this does not move forward beyond the evaluation. So there will be no peer review or second level of review for proposals which are voted technically unacceptable by majority of the panel. So this is really an important parameter that you think of and make sure that the proposal is fully covered. It has everything described. Another thing that comes to my mind, do not assume that reviewers know everything. You need to have clearly identify, clearly describe things. If you are giving references, please make sure that you address to those references, what are those are correctly listed, and what you are telling is really indicated in those publications. So those are a couple of things, key things that you need to keep in mind when you are building your proposal. Next slide, Billy, please. In addition to technical evaluation criteria and technically acceptable and unacceptable, there are compliance issues. These are not scored. They do not impact the scores of a proposal, but these are really important things that you need to look at, and you should address those things. Human subject protections, animal welfare, resource sharing, these are all links are there. So again, I will not spend time in going through that. Data sharing plan and genome data and biohazards. And so please do address these things. If these are not applicable, please clearly indicate that those are not applicable. And it's always a good idea to write why they are not applicable. If animal welfare is not applicable, at least a line, a sentence saying that why they are not applicable. Same thing with human subjects. Resource sharing plan is part of the form, that fillable form. So you do need to data sharing a resource sharing plan. You should be clearly identifying that and describe those. Thanks. Next slide, please, Billy. All right, so I think that was my last slide. I have nothing else to discuss. If there are particular questions, would be happy to address that.
Also, Tiffany Chadwick, if you're on the line, did you want to say anything before we dive into Q&A?
Hi, Billy. I would just make a couple of comments, and then I'm mostly here to just handle any questions you all have. I think one of the common questions we get is about success rates. So on our last iteration of this solicitation, we ended up having, I believe, 46 contracts or proposals go through to evaluation, through the full evaluation process. And we made 6 awards. So that was about 13% of the ones that went through the full evaluation process. One of the things I would caution you on is to read the eligibility criteria closely before you even invest the time to submit your proposal. We have had proposals fall through at the last minute when they couldn't certify to the ownership and the employment eligibility criteria that are in the solicitation. So those are very important, and we do not grant deviations very often. I will say for the 50% PI employment at the small business, I have never seen us grant a deviation for that requirement. And then the ownership requirements about it being a certain percentage of American owners that make up the company, and the venture capital requirements about ownership, those are things that there is not a deviation from that we're able to grant. Those have to be complied with for us to make the award. So please don't waste anybody's time and only apply if you can get to eligibility. And with that, I will just see what questions people have. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffany. Stop sharing my screen now.
I do see a question in the chat, Billy, if you want me to take one.
Sure, go for it.
So there was a question in the chat about whether an investigator at NCI could be a partner in an SBIR award. I would just point you back to the SBIR policy directive. There is a policy against us issuing an award where a subcontract is going to be made back to us, the issuing agency, or to actually any federal agency, except in the instance of working with a federally funded research and development center, a federal laboratory. So there is a small exception, but generally that would not apply to working with NCI in any way where we would be getting any money back. And it gets very difficult when there are issues around us providing resources to any company who's going to complete one of the awards. So if that is more of the angle of your question, if you submit it in an email, we can look at it on a case-by-case basis. And I think, Billy, did your PowerPoint have the NCIOA SBIR email address in it for people to pose questions to?
Yes, it does.
Great. So I would say generally that's not something that we're going to encourage, but if you believe you have a unique situation, you can submit it to the email inbox and we'll investigate. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I appreciate that. That was actually one of the questions that I was going to read out first. So first, I'm Sarah Jamil, and as Billy mentioned, I'm part of the NCI SBIR, and I'm here to help facilitate the questions. And we've received some quite great questions in the question box. So I'll try to cluster them together so that folks can get the most benefit out of the questions. So the first question is around applications. Can we submit an application without preliminary results? And this is something that you covered already, Billy, but I think it's worthwhile just to go over it just one last time.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, preliminary data is not required. So you can go ahead and submit. And I would just key in that you have to demonstrate some type of scientific rationale. So you can use existing literature and to kind of clearly support it. But preliminary data is not required. It can be optionally submitted. And if it is optionally submitted, it's a one-page maximum.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, now let's turn to the white papers. We have quite a few questions asking about white papers. The first one is there a template or instructions for the white paper?
There should be some information in the solicitation. There's a whole section on the white paper, but essentially it's a short 2 to 3 page kind of summary of your technology. And I would put kind of all the best features of your technology, right? If you're asking NCI to give some feedback whether we consider this and encourage a full proposal, you want to provide enough information, because we do perform our own kind of preliminary internal review. So there has to be enough detail in there, so make things stand out, like feasibility, rationale, innovation, tied to an existing unmet medical need in a rare and pediatric cancer. All of those things should be kind of clear.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Billy. You went over this a little bit in the answer that you just gave right now, but what type of information should the white paper include besides the description of the proposed product? Do we have a link for the information on what the white paper is? Maybe we can share it here.
That is on page 32 of the solicitation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Nadeem. Yeah, so just look at the solicitation. Take some time to read the solicitation so that you can know what you need to add. But for the white paper, make sure you add your indication too, right, Billy?
Yeah, indication. You can kind of treat it almost like a specific aims page, right? Where you kind of talk about the product, the innovation, the unmet medical need, and then kind of briefly describe your objectives also as well.
All right, great. And another white paper question. Can the white paper include figures?
Yep, yes, it can include figures.
All right, well, awesome. Right. A question regarding scope. If the technology has the potential to target both rare and common cancers, how does that impact eligibility?
So I mean, yeah, I would say you want to write your white paper and your application specifically focusing on the rare cancer indication. You can, kind of have a general paragraph somewhere saying this may be applicable down the line to, other cancers as well. But we're really looking for a focus on a rare pediatric cancer. So that has to be kind of clear. So, really define how that cancer is currently diagnosed or treated and whatever you're proposing, how it would fit into that space and kind of discuss on a, future long-term market plan as well, let's say.
Great. Another scope question. Should the proposal describe the targeted application of an innovative technology to a single specific pediatric cancer subtype? Or are we allowed to submit a proposal that describes a tech that may be applicable to any or many pediatric cancers?
So I feel like the general guidance is right. We always talk about having kind of a defined focus, right? So just think about it in terms of developing a product is my suggestion, right? So ultimately you want to develop a product. You can think about what your first disease indication would be. And I would kind of generate the focus, kind of all around that. But if it's not necessarily, I would say, a deal killer if it's applicable to other disease indications as well.
Or possibly like folks do for specific Ames pages, you can say that your tech can be applicable to multiple cancers, but we're focusing on this one for a beachhead market or so on. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, another scope question. This might be a little more particular. It's asking for advice. We're working on restoring functionality to tumor suppressors that are involved in many types of cancers, and we have not clinically narrowed down the scope yet. Are there any recommendations on how to go about this in the proposal? Since typically the focus is on a specific rare or pediatric cancer subtype.
Yeah, I think in this case, it's probably, better to submit a white paper and get some specific feedback from NCI. You can provide enough detail to give a full, well-informed answer, I would say.
Right. And I guess the answer to the previous question also applies here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's nice if you have so many targets you can hit, but it's good to focus on one thing so that you don't miss your chance. All right. We have a question about I-Corps. Where is the I-Corps program held?
It's virtual now, right? I believe. So it used to be held, and I'm still learning this. I think it was held in Texas previously, but now I believe it's all held virtually. But there'll be a whole kind of orientation and kind of some informational webinars when we get to that stage once awards are made. And there'll be some specific information provided for the I-Corps program.
All right, great. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going through the scanning the proposed solicitation. It is on page 6 of the solicitation. That's why let's go through the solicitation. You'll find almost answer of all the questions that you have.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when you send us your questions, that's where we go to find the answers. Control, find, and there we go. Thank you, Nadeem. All right, some more white paper questions. How much detail needs to be included in the white paper, especially if patent application is pending?
Yeah, I would say, you have to provide enough detail to allow a review, right? We're going to make some type of determination whether we encourage a full proposal or not. So, my suggestion is put all of your best information in that short 2 to 3 page summary. Provide enough information in there to allow proper review. Anyone that's going to review this white paper is an NIH employee, so they're bound by confidentiality and all that as well.
Right. Thank you. I'm not sure I understand this question very well, but I'll give it a go. Since the application has an allocated section, and I believe they mean an allocated section for figures, does that mean the figures cannot be submitted for different sections? Only written parts are required?
Yeah, so the only chance you'll have to submit a figure will be in the optional 1-page preliminary data section. And you would generate that in a Word document, convert it to a PDF, and then merge it to the fillable technical proposal form.
Great, thank you, Billy. Another application related question. Is there an advantage for applications that propose a treatment for a rare and pediatric cancer versus only pediatric or rare cancers? That's a good one.
I don't think there's any, any huge advantage. Obviously, I think either one is fine. It's going to depend on the technology, how innovative it is, how much it is disruptive in that space. And then, I guess if it is disruptive in both a rare pediatric cancer, that would probably work to your advantage, I guess.
Right. I mean, you drive home the unmet need more that way, right? Is the white paper required? The solicitation states that it's optional but strongly recommended. So is it required?
It's highly, highly encouraged.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that covers the majority of the questions. Some here seem to be repeats. One last question, which you just answered, is it okay to disclose a technology that has been covered by a provisional patent? Again, we're under confidentiality agreements, so we cannot disclose anything as NIH employees, right, Billy? We see this in grant proposals all the time, so contracts are pretty much the same, if not more stringent.
Yeah, definitely. Nadeem has something to add too.
Okay.
Regarding this proprietary, I just remember in the solicitation, there is a mention that in the proposal, if you are using or presenting some confidential proprietary information, please indicate that in the proposal so that we are more careful about it. Please don't use any sensitive information or any proprietary information in the statement of work, because the statement of work is published and made public. So please be mindful of that.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point, Nadeem. I appreciate that. So don't share anything that's proprietary in your statement of work. I'm just repeating that, so if anyone did not hear it, it's out there again. All right. The final question that I see in front of me is an eligibility question, which I think Tiffany answered in the beginning, but we might just go over it one more time. Do you have to have an academic or institutional partner?
So I would say no, you do not need to have one. The earlier question was whether that could be NCI, and I would say I do not think it should be NCI. And there's policy around that. So if you're unsure about some of the policy around using federal collaborators, you should reach out to the SBIR policy directive online. You can just Google it, SBIR policy directive, and you can see the same policy that we have to deal with. But this general question about whether you need to have an institutional partner, this is not like an STTR. You can do it all yourself. It's just about you're going to be evaluated based on the expertise of the team that you provide. You should be mindful, everybody should be mindful of what the limitations are in the amount that you can subcontract out. So there are thresholds that you need to meet yourself for an SBIR award. But you can choose to work with a collaborator, or you can choose not to. And I don't know, Billy, if you want to add to that at all, or if that was enough.
I think that's good. I would just say, it is pretty common, for animal work and animal studies, there's frequently a sub-award, and that's with a partnering nonprofit research institutions. It is pretty common.
Great, thank you. Billy, there's a request over here for sharing the link to the rare cancers.
It's in the solicitation also, and it should be on the slides that we're providing also, so you can access it that way as well.
Well, if there are no more questions, one more. Every time I think there are no more, something pops up, which is great. Engaged audience. All right. Is there any requirement around if a certain percentage of employees need to be U.S. citizens, and if the company is majority? Sorry, let me start again. Is there any requirement around if a certain percentage of employees need to be U.S. citizens if the company is a majority U.S. owned company?
So I can try to take that one first, and then Billy can correct me if I say anything wrong. So the main ownership requirements are around the ownership of the business, which is kind of what you're pointing out. There is, of course, a limit to the amount of employees you can have. You can't have more than 500 employees to be small for the purposes of this solicitation. The other thing that we're going to look at is where the work is being performed. So we need the work to be performed in the United States unless there is a deviation. So I don't have a check unnecessarily where each individual employee is currently working. So that's not something that I would look at in my compliance. So Billy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's good. That's where I was going to lean. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Can the institutional partner be a CRO which has the appropriate facilities to work with, such as radiation?
So there's subawards, and then you can talk about a fee for services. So you can think, usually I think CROs are probably better suited for a fee for service, and that would be kind of the budget portion of the actual small business concern.
Great.
Nadeem?
Just to add, Billy, I think minimum of 2/3 of the work must be done by the awardee.
Right.
And the rest of them can be subcontracted.
Right. Yeah. So, and then the fee for service could technically be built, I think, into the small business concern pool. But right, 2/3 of the work has to be performed by the small business concern.
Right, and in that case, the CRO would not be considered an institutional partner.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. Are all the small business review panelists non-NCI employees also bound by the confidentiality agreement?
Let me take that one. Yes, they are. They are bound by confidentiality and conflicts of interest. And that's why it's also a good idea to indicate if you have some intellectual property information, you can always mark them within the proposal. And these things are never discussed or shared with anybody except the review panel.
All right, sounds good. Bryce, do we have any other questions, or was that all?
I think there are a couple more that just came in.
We're up on the 2-minute warning. So why don't we take like one more question and then wrap up so we finish within time?
All right. Well, I'll try to be quick. Can an NCI investigator be a consultant?
This is where I would again say that we do not want the money to flow back to NCI or the federal government unless the money is going to go into an agreement with a federally funded research and development center. So I would say generally no.
Right. So they cannot be part of the budget.
Right. There are some instances where NCI has tried to make staff available to work with you in developing the product, but that is going to be something that we would offer to anybody who wins that award, not something that you propose as a consultant in your proposal.
All right, great. This one touches on foreign components. So is it a problem if a foreign CRO is used for part of the proposed work, for example, for chemical synthesis, especially if there are distinguished if they are distinguished in comparison to US-based companies?
So I'll start by quickly saying that the general rule is the work needs to happen in the United States. And we do offer some deviations to this where you can prove that there is not a feasible way for the work to happen in the United States for as small of a portion as absolutely possible. And you're just going to have to make your case for that if that is what you think is the only way forward. Billy, do you want to say anything on that?
No, like cost wouldn't be a reason. It has to be there's no expertise or no ability to do that in the US. And even that, it's a lengthy process, and it'll be on a case-by-case basis.
All right, well, we are at time. I know that there was one more question that came in, but maybe try to email us and we can give you a more lengthy answer. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Billy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all for tuning in. Really looking forward to receiving white papers and applications. This is a great funding opportunity, and thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.